So hello, welcome to the 84th edition of JAXB and start with the content. So first, my apologies to all the entire meetup group. What happened the last time, I actually, there was a mistake with the scheduling and I scheduled the show 1 week later. So why it happened? So it has several reasons. The one reason is sometimes it seems like the meetup is overloaded and I cannot just create the event using the desktop for unknown reasons. From with mobile like smartphones it is working, and but it is less convenient. But this was not the real problem. The problem was actually my code, and this is the code. And it worked well, except it's the it is already the first Monday of the month. And in this particular case, it was. So what I do here is I say, okay, from now, plus month, 1 month. And what I do then is I'm searching for the first Monday of the month. But sometimes, if this is already a Monday, the first Monday like today, this will find the next Monday. So I will have to rework the algorithm. I wanted to fix it, but now I know the problem. So it will mess up it twice a year. So the first time now, and or last this was actually unhappy accident, right? Because it was the February 1st, and now we have the March the 1st, and this is the problem. So I'm using this to schedule the meetings. Or not this, as this is part of the scripts or a Java program I'm using, which creates automatically the JAXB site. So sorry for that. And on that note, we are almost 400, which is remarkable. So it's more like, you know, a small or even large Java user group, right? So like JAXB community. And a spontaneous idea before the show, what we actually can do, we can do actually a real live show. So what I thought about is to invite, you know, or I just can schedule the show and invite you, you know, to a live meeting, so we can have a live questions, not only the gist questions. So we can do it once, just for fun. Okay, so we have waited for a celebration. I don't know, 100th edition or 90th edition or something like this. It's also a question of time. Okay, now we did this, and of course the workshops are around the corner and they are well attended. So the first one will be fun. We're just talking about several architectures like Monolith, and I think this year Monolith could come back a little bit. So we start with Monolith, then microservices, event-driven, reactive programming, secure as, and whatever you like to know. So we will do it, so as many architectures as possible with lots of code. And the next workshop is also very well attended. It's about event streaming with Kafka and MicroProfile. I have several projects in this area, so it should be fun. So you can ask me, as always, as many questions as you like. And in May, the both workshop will also take place, are about front ends. And also here, this year and last year, I did a lot of projects without any frameworks. I was surprised how productive this actually is. And this will be also the topic of the workshops. Okay, so now we had this, and this was the bug. I will fix it, of course. And I just thought, you know, I have no time to actually think about this. So I will probably use, you know, an ordinary Java loop for statement and search for the next Monday. So, okay, now the very first question. So we covered this. This is an unusual question, and I got this via email. And if I get a technical question via email, my answer was I really have no time to answering any questions via email. So please, you know, ask here. And this is a WebLogic 12. I have to admit my last project with WebLogic was probably WebLogic 10. And then all my clients migrated to Glassfish and now Payara back then. So I don't have any WebLogic projects anymore. But still, I really liked WebLogic actually. So I still like, you know, the older versions of WebLogic, and no experience with the newest one. So, but now maybe I can answer this question. Default Work Manager is bound under this JNDI, Java Global. So what I know, Java Global is like the singleton. So it is global. It means you can directly look it up. And this one, Java Comp, it belongs actually to the deployment unit, so usually you will have to resolve it somehow. You can do it with annotations or with deployment descriptors. So and the question is why there is a difference. Yeah, because this is usually, it could be even per server, and this is more or less per application or even per component. So this is like component binding. And why do they have a different context? Well, because this one is meant to be global and this one is meant to be local. And so at the end of the or at the end, starting with Java EE 6, I think I always preferred the global, because it was, I don't have to resolve this with. So usually, the global name is like the name. This is what usually would like to do. And at the beginning, the Java EE was more or less like Kubernetes. There were lots of roles. So we had, the component assembler roles, and the idea was you would have the resources, and the resources are deployed, and there is like a component packager, and the packager decides, what is the actual name of the components. There was like an indirection, and this is the reminder of the indirection. Okay, now the next question is WebLogic Work J2E, J2E Work Manager, and WebLogic implementation from Common J Work Manager. So the question is this implements that? I have to admit, no idea. But what I know, I was in several WebLogic how to call it, task forces, where we try to fix the project or help my clients. And most of the classes reside in weblogic.jar. So what I will do is I would just, this is like private show. So you could just extract the jar, look at the class and decompile that and see whether it actually implements that. Or if you cannot do this, what you can still do, you can just try to load the class with class for name, and then with instance of whether you get class exception or not. This is a little bit dangerous, because what could happen is if it's loaded by different class loaders, you still get the class exception. So yeah, this is what I will advise. So the next, sorry, and this was Mr. So I guess this was me, but this is Mr. Hingis Wiss. But this one is Nerijus Aimanavičius. So very nice name. And he asked me, can you recommend Jakarta EE Security training or courses? Jakarta EE Security. So first, some resources. So how to find Jakarta EE resources. So if you search for Jakarta EE, we can actually search Java EE Security, and I think this is JSR 375. Yes, this is the reference implementation. You will find lots of examples, and accidentally I found this examples by Mr. De Busche from Payara. But this is not what I wanted to show you. There are another, so this is also a nice resource, and the other one is JSR 375 Jakarta. Sorry, if you search for Java EE, you will find more resources, because it is older than so. And this is the GitHub specification, and there should be also. So this is the specification, and there should be on GitHub a couple of examples. So GitHub examples. And where are the Soteria? This is the reference implementation. And you will find here somewhere under test lots of examples. Now, but still, the question was not about resources, it was about training. So what I will do is I will ask, the source. And this is Monsieur Arian Times. He has runs an own company, and this guy was one of the co-authors of Jakarta EE Security, and I had an interview with him. I forgot actually to search for that, JAXB, and there was Arian Times. So, and actually two things, because this was one interview about Payara Cloud, and the other one was introduction of Arian. So you can listen to two, Java EE authentication and authorization. So what I will do in your case, I will convince Arian that Arian should deliver, the Java EE Security workshop to you, and you will get probably, the best possible training on earth, right? Java EE, because he's really knowledgeable, nice guy, and he knows a lot about, he knows also about backgrounds, why it is created this way and not the other way. So I will do that. So I think covered. So Arian Times, if you would like, to hear how he sounds, listen to JAXB there are TV, of course, FM. There are 2 podcasts with him. Now, Mr. Vano Beritze from Tbilisi, Georgia, almost USA, right? So no. So now we have a Java application that's running JBoss EAP in domain configuration. It uses timers, and you would like to push it to the cloud. So with the clouds, I think that there is one term which I heard recently: lift and shift. Yeah, if you do the lift and shift, there's nothing to do. It should work as on-premise. So what you could actually do, you can run JBoss in the clouds, and then it should behave like in your data center. There will be no difference, because whether it runs on bare metal or Docker container, I mean, there is no difference. And you can even still maintain, your timers in a central database. Also no difference, because to my knowledge, for instance, Amazon has RDS, and RDS can be Postgres, can be MySQL, even I think Oracle. You can run Aurora, which is more or less serverless, so you can just say, I would like to have the database. So there are plenty of possibilities. If you have Azure Cloud, it's the same story. You get, of course, Microsoft SQL Server, but all the other database. You can even install the database if you like on your VM, but I wouldn't advise that. So just use a managed database. So there will be no difference. But what you can also do, you can say, I don't like the persistent timers, so you can remove them. And if the JBoss will run in a cluster, which I assume it will do, so there will be 2 nodes behind the load balancer, what you could do is you can start, not behind the load balancer, before the load balancer, you can launch a job which periodically pings, a REST service, and then you get the pings. And if you have a Kubernetes service, so in a Kubernetes service, there is, I think, a job API, which could just do this for you. So there's almost like a cron job, which will periodically, invoke an URI, and the URI gets load balanced to all your instances, and you are basically set. So with JSF applications in the cloud, how to ensure HTTP replication across pods. So HTTP session replication is not a matter of cloud, it's the matter of implementation. So what all the servers forever can do is you could actually store the HTTP session in a central database. This would be the easiest. So there's nothing to do. What you can also use, you can try you can just use InfiniSpan for that. The only problem could be, the UDP and the multicast or whatever network you are using in the cloud. It could be a little bit hard to set up. So what I try to do with, because you already have the central database, I would try to store the HTTP session in the central database. Another option is to configure the how to call it, ingress router. You can usually do it, and you can for instance, you can configure the ALB as this application load balancer on AWS if you have it. So if you are in something like in a serverless environment, maybe there is no real load balancer. So this really depends where your application is running. But if you have a load balancer, you can usually specify something like session affinity. So what you will have to do is, to tell the load balancer, if you see the JSession ID or whatever you have, just reroute the traffic to this node. So the entire traffic gets rebalanced between the nodes, but one client end up, hitting always the same server. I think if the performance is good enough, I would try to store the session in a central location. it does not have to be a database. It could be or relational database and can be a NoSQL database. So next question from Mr. Hingi Swiss. And the question is, if I have a jar module and a RAR, RAR is package format for JCA, Java Connector Architecture. Both modules packed in one year. So year, I think I didn't package years for 5 to 10 years. In which sequence the lifecycle from will be run of the year gets deployed? What I think what you mean is whether RAR or year should be created first. And we had already the problem on Glassfish. So we had an year application with RAR package inside the application. And then what happened was the RAR was created. So it was actually called in the right order. The problem was the RAR took longer to initialize than the year. And the year tried we got the year reference the RAR connector, but it was not ready to respond. So what do you what to do with it, right? So if you what we did actually, we deployed the RAR outside the year, because if you think about this, usually the RAR, for instance, in application servers, most of the JDBC resources can be deployed as RAR, and usually they are. JMS is connected with RAR, so resource archive. Some of the GMS providers even are installed with that. SAP we use in project with RAR. So from my perspective, RAR is something like JDBC level. And all the data sources and stuff like that is actually globally installed on the application server. So I will install the RAR outside the year. And by the way, the gentleman here asked me via email that they have some problem with sequence of events. What I know is, and I found that if you have WebLogic and you are paying a customer, you get commercial support for Hadidon. And Hadidon is great. So what you could do is you could run support, you can run with support the commercial or the problematic parts of your WebLogic code on Hadidon. How this would help you? So what Hadidon comes with is a great support for reactive messaging, and the reactive messaging seems to be your problem. So what I understood from your email, and so what reactive messaging will solve for you is the concurrency, because it is guaranteed to run in a single thread. The messages won't overtake each other and you get back pressure. So this will solve your problem. So maybe, it is better than, RAR and JCA is not widely known technology. So I think it will be easier for you, or easier, more future-proof to migrate from WebLogic to Hadidon, and both is Oracle, and you get even support from Oracle. And this is what I would at least not advise, but you should think about that. And if you're curious about Hadidon, recently I recorded a couple of episodes with Hadidon and MicroProfile, and Hadidon is really nice. So it reminds me on Glassfish, so nice server. Okay, this was the idea, and and it is supported. So this is read the article. So it's interesting. So let's see. Hello from Hamburg, I would say, from Munich. So music playing. Hopefully, no more music. I was afraid that I forgot to switch to the content, but yeah. Hello. Okay, so we covered Hadidon, and this is the reactive messaging I told you about. And you get, the integration with JMS, and I think it's a kind of connector, but not JCA. And yeah, and we also covered the Soteria and also Ariane. So next one. This one is nice. Constructor injection versus field injection. So I would open that and open that. So I get it from time to time, and also see it in projects. And my opinion is, of course, very subjective. I think this is more, back then we had a lots of discussions about logging frameworks and code formatting a little bit, but yeah. And now we see this a little bit. So now there are two articles which are actually good, and whatever I read here, it is true. So like, you know, the gist is in both articles. By the way, I actually never really used Spring. So with the auto-wire component, I understand what it means, but I have no, maybe in the Spring world, there's different aesthetics or ideas how to create the application. And in my Java projects, I don't use dependency injection a lot. So, and the arguments, I saw this, I see the arguments over and over again. So, for instance, the easy single responsibility principle violation disallows immutable field declarations. Yes, everything what I see is true, but I mean, we have different problems in projects. This is what I wanted to express. So I perform a lots of code reviews, and I don't think, you know, that any of these findings could be solved with constructor injection. So, and it's just like, you know, back then everyone was obsessed. I remember this exactly, you know, with encapsulation. You know, everything had to be private. Then, you know, a few years later, everything had to be private and final. And then what happens in project, of course, everything was private and then exposed via getters and setters. So we had it already, you know, a couple of times on the show. And so what I do is I really like the Corkus way. So, and by the way, Quarkus, yeah, now let's start Corkus. This would be like the field DI or property PDI. Completely wrong. Do it again. Group ID is AirHex, and this was PDI. And the project version is this. This is perfect. Yeah, rest easy. Yes, sample code is nice. So what's wrong with me today? Complete wrong folder. So again, group ID is AirHex, PDI. Okay, okay, yes. Now, okay, open the, oh man. You saw that? Ah, I know why. I'm using my notebook without external keyboard, and this is a little bit different to my keyboard. So this is the one of the, you know, pandemic effects. If you don't travel a lot, I always use external keyboard, which is a little bit different from a notebook. So now, this is the Corkus code, and what I usually do in my projects, or hopefully all my YouTube videos, if I had a greetings service. And let's say here, this is the, oh, deprecated will probably also work. And then public string message. Return hello. So what I usually do in Corkus is the following. I do the or Quarkus in my projects is greetings service. Let's call it GS, and then just add inject. And I do it for years, and it works surprisingly well. And accidentally, Corkus does the same, which is like a lucky accident, because some of my project wanted to migrate from Java EE or Jakarta EE to Corkus, and there was actually nothing to do. So now, of course, you know, encapsulation is violated because potentially someone from outside could access the field, but I never saw this. I reviewed a lot of code, but I never saw this. And even if someone would attempt to do that, so in this particular case, it doesn't make any sense because it's JAXB as a resource. And in this greetings resource, if this class would have transactions or scope, you get always the proxy injected. So even if you would, you know, try to access the field, you get the proxy. So, but still, never had a problem. So in theory, it could happen, but it never happened. So I don't care. So now, what Hadidon does, seems like the Hadidon people like constructor injection. So I'll show you now, by the way, okay, I'll show you now first the Hadidon way. So let's go with init and just go the MicroProfile and bear, I think. Project name, okay, group ID, a hex, perfect, and just go with POC. No. Okay, POC. The POC, and then open that. Now, if you look at the Hadidon code, usually, hopefully, is still the case. Yes. They use dependency constructor injection, and what they are injecting here is the property string message. And what I saw in the other article is said, okay, if you have constructor injection, no one will use 10 fields, injected fields. I have to say, without constructor injection, I never had more than 5 properly injected fields. It's unusual to have more. And I really don't like the code. What you probably watched me several times is what I always do is the first thing I do is I refactor the code to something like this. And I would say also, there is a couple of things are violated, but there is significantly less code and less noise. And this is what I prefer. But I had already, lots of discussions about that. And if someone really would like to use constructor injection, they should use constructor injection. But I would like to write my code this way. And from testability, it's just great because usually the unit test resides in the same package as this code. So I can inject whatever I like without even, just by setting the field directly without any reflection. So for me, it works perfectly. What I can also do, I'm not forced in my unit test, to set everything in the constructor. I can just set these things which interest me during the unit test. With the constructor injection forces me, in advance to set the entire object, which is not always necessary. So I prefer that. It is cleaner. It is not perfect from theoretical point of view, but works great for 10 years since Java 6 I'm using that. And yeah, the problem is what I always have to fight, is the Sonar rules are violated. So the Sonar does not like me because it's okay. What they are doing here is you are violating, the encapsulation. Okay, now we cover that constructor injection versus property injection, right? Okay, now let's see. Back to Quarkus, because I would like to misuse Quarkus to show you something. Or not misuse my project to show you something. And what I did the last time is Quarkus. Oh. And wait a sec. Okay, I found no reason my Quarkus plugin is deactivated, but I can just add here. It was hopefully yes, Quarkus small y matrix probably. Let's see, matrix, small y matrix, exactly. This is what I wanted to have. And this is not test, it is global scope. And then I should be able to do this, count it. Okay. Now, perfect. Maven, compile, Quarkus dev. This is what I did the last time. Okay, small matrix started, and I spent the last time 5 minutes, fighting with Corkus, because what I wanted to show you is this matrix, and there was nothing. Matrix application, there was nothing. And I try, I say, this is impossible. It always worked. Why it doesn't? And what I didn't think about is to do this. And the problem is, before the show, I always update, Corkus to the newest, and I got the recent release. And what they did is they moved, matrix application and health, everything to the Q namespace. And so what means is if I do this, it works. So it will automatically redirect. So, and so of course, it is annoying because I always forget about that. And what I did is I started, oh, by the way, this is the next question. So this was a perfect timing. So let's go here. I actually described that in my blog post and in Open an Issue. And this is the blog post. You saw me struggling in the last show. Somehow popular post, and this is the issue here. Let's go here, and it's a long one. This was 17 days ago, and we started with Twitter discussion, and it seems like they will revert that. This is my thing. So they will health metrics open API. This is going to be not under the queue, which is a very good thing. So this is why the last time my metrics example didn't work. Okay, so now you know it. If your project, suddenly Quarkus project, you try to find about health and metrics and you do the curl and there is nothing, think about the queue. And by the way, the very first comment on the JAXB, someone said, /q. It's like, what is that? Is this like, what does it mean /q? And then I did, this -I, and I saw q okay. So then was the best comment ever, very concise comment. Okay, we clarified that. Then Vue.js follow-up. I forgot to mention this the last time. So what I did on a podcast, so I had an interview with, forgot about Strats 2. And by the way, so this will come later, but what Spring started with, this is back to the constructor injection, forgot to mention that. What Spring started with, they wanted to be, the regular Java beans. So this was the idea that they initialize everything with constructors without reflection and XML. And we mentioned this during the conversation with Ben Manes or Maines. And this was a really interesting interview with him because he also worked at Google. And he created the caffeine cache. And this is the cache is used by Quarkus and Infinispan as well. I didn't know about that. So if you would like to to listen to the backgrounds of how Spring happened a little bit and how to build caches, and Ben is really obsessed about caching, so you should listen to this episode. Okay, but why I mentioned Vue.js again exactly. So there was a discussion about Strats 2. With Lukáš, Lennart, and what I did during the show, I actually, where is it? View. Let's broken link. How this is possible? Vue.js. And what you see here is that all the work happens here, and this basically dried out. And this is what I compared this with Strats 2. So if you search for Strats 2, Strats GitHub, Apache Strats, And if you search for contributors, you see that is actually very popular. If comparing to Vue.js, more popular. So I just created a short screencast about that because it's interesting. That I mean, the contributions are interesting. That actually such an old project is still active, like Strats. And what happened then is I got an interesting comment to the blog post. This is what I wanted to clarify, that actually the Vue.js here, there is not a fork, there is a new version. And the new version, this was not obvious to me, because if you go to Vue.js, the website, let's see whether it changed actually. So if you go to the website, then go to GitHub, and then to contributors, where is it? Used by contributors, you get, you know, exactly the view. But I got the comment that actually this version is no more active, or shouldn't be active anymore. So what should happen is, let's wait a second. In Vue.js, there's Vue 3, I think. Vue.js, Vue. Where is it? Docs or Vue Next. The Vue Next. And the Vue Next is actually the next version where the work happens. So if we switch to Vue.js Next, so there's a complete different picture, but still, you know, the even Yao does the majority of work, and everyone else is just, you know, like almost nothing if you compare to this, right? But it's, you know, it's still very active, and but I think this is not advised to use in production. So this is just so I was not wrong in the screencast, but maybe it is not like I wanted to say just use Struts and don't use Vue. Not at all. I found just interesting that it I wanted to attribute the work of Lucas that actually Struts is very well maintained. This was the intention. Okay, next one. JAXB customizations without annotations. The last time I got a question and forgot to mention that. So, and the question was, someone uses entities and is which are exposed or serialized to the outside world using JAXB, and this is not possible. And he's not allowed to change the code. So, is it possible to mark such fields, some fields as transient? And the answer is, it is. You can use JAXB bindings. So you could use XML to override mappings. So this is what you can do. This is the feedback. It's called, if you search for customizing JAXB bindings, you will find the tutorial. Okay, next one. Micronaut and MicroProfile. This is just a short one. What I did, I was actually I was asked by organizer of the JCon conference, Marcus Kett, whether I would whether I have time, to show some Hadidon stuff during a screencast, which I committed last year. And it's okay, can you do another one? It's okay, but Hadidon 2 screencasts could be a little bit boring to do something else. And I say, okay, why not, just to play with Micronaut? Say, okay, but and what I did is I used the Micronaut data and combined it with Hadidon. What I just wanted to tell you that what I didn't know is that Micronaut supports actually JAXRS in an interesting way. And parts of CDI, I mean, just the JSR 330 with @inject and singleton, but still, and and Micronaut also is fully supported. Oracle commits a lot of stuff to Micronaut, which could be an interesting framework. For me, it feels strange, what means not familiar. So for me, because the API is a little bit different. But why the framework is so interesting? Because Micronaut does not use reflection at all. It relies fully on annotation processors. So this is interesting. Okay, now, Mr. I think Muafak Zarhan, I guess. And A is, of course, Adam. So this is Mufak Adam Zarhan. Ask me, What is your recommendation for front-end web application setup regarding dependency management? Rollup. So I used Snowpack, which was recently renamed to something else, but I rolled back to Rollup. It's less magic. And currently in my web component project, I only need Redux Toolkit, parts of Redux Toolkit, then lit HTML, and this is basically it, and some CSS. And I use Rollup for build. Rollup. I use Rollup externally in a dependency project, and the 3 files I created once I just included to my project. So I use Rollup, and in my main project there is no npm, no Rollup at all. Again, I convert, from the proprietary JavaScript modules, the ES6 modules only once using Rollup. And then I just consume the files, and this is basically it. So with web components, you don't need a lot of dependencies. So Mr. Martin Funk. Oh, I said, what is this Mafula Funk? Martin Funk. So about predictions, and you won't believe, I thought about that yesterday actually, because before Christmas I already compiled a list of my predictions. I had absolutely no time to write a post about that because I spend my time in 3 concurrent projects and they're almost done and they consume all my time. But yeah, what I did is I found the list, so I can show you what if I will find time to I would say if I write the predictions, I should, manage to write the prediction for 2021 before June. So this would be nice. But what I observe is very briefly is that Kubernetes is a little bit out of fashion, or projects try to avoid that and use, straight containers or serverless or whatever, because it comes with complexity and in some clouds even with higher costs. And what I also wanted to do with the function as a service, I also seen projects that if the function as a service is misused less and used properly a little bit more. So like, event trigger, or not event trigger, yeah, it could be event trigger, but even event consumer, like message driven beans. I see and more that actually the functions are used as they meant to be. 5 years ago, as AWS Lambda came out, I saw the project which some clients tried to migrate Java EE projects to Lambdas, which was incredible because, they had, several hundred Lambdas and no one knew what happens, right? So behind the scenes. Then still, I would say what I also see right now that the clients become more reasonable. So if they push the applications to the clouds, to the public clouds, they use additional features which are not available in the private clouds. But I think, what's also possible that some of my clients say, we are not interested in public clouds, it's cheaper to run the clouds, the application in a private cloud. And by the way, what I also observe is the costs of microservice in the public cloud. So I don't think the problem is, the memory or CPU. It's rather the amount of microservices. So what I would expect for 2021 or 2022, that because of the costs, a monolith could become, can come into fashion again. And regarding clouds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate I think it's called Payara Cloud. Let's see. Payara Cloud. Yes. And I didn't sign any NDAs yet. And I never saw this cloud, but I think I can imagine what it is. So my expectation of this cloud is that you can just push wars to this and everything is managed for you. And this would be like, heaven of all clouds, right? Because this is what I always ask myself, why it never happened. I mean, why Sun didn't implement that? Because this would be the true cloud, right? The true serverless. The servers are somewhere. I don't care actually who manages the servers. I just push my business logic, my tiny war to the cloud, and it just runs. So something like this could partially come back, because every microservice you ship to the cloud, you have to pay for. And I did some math for a small startup, and they already think, to merge the microservices to a monolith, and it is going to be cheaper because they started with the microservices just for fun, right? They wanted to have the microservices, and no one knew why actually. And so this is why I still think, and I actually always said that the monolith, they are actually interesting, right? So, but something like this could come back. I don't know what the Payara Cloud, but why not, have for a stock CRUD applications, or just general workload. So you have a simple application, a boring application with a database and something. To why I have to create the entire cloud just to have a CRUD. And I also spent some time in the clouds, and I have to say what many projects underestimate is the complexity in a cloud. If you just try to run I don't know, Kubernetes or something similar to the cloud, if you create all the VPC and all the networks and subnets and availability zones, I mean, this is stuff which is also complex. And if you have running data center, it just happens for you. So maybe some projects recognize that, and there will be some I don't know how to call it. Either it will be different services are going to be used, like something like Fargate or Azure Container Instances or something like this, or Payara Cloud. So where we get something what we got for the private clouds in the public cloud or something like that, right? And you shouldn't underestimate the costs. Okay. Now, what are the questions? No questions, predictions. And so web components and web standards. So I'm amazed by the productivity. I actually created several commercial projects with web components and web standards. And what I did right now, I just focus more on the best practices or patterns. So I just remembered the Java fix and swing patterns, and just was more strict applying the patterns, and it was crazy productive. So I'm thinking about delivering a workshop. The workshop around the corner in May. So there will be an online workshop, but I will even, if time allows, I will also record a workshop. Then Project Loom and reactive programming. The idea is so Project Loom could make reactive programming less interesting for the general purpose programming, like Java 8 streams made Scala less interesting for general purpose functional programming. And of course, if you have Kafka, reactive programming is just the way to go, or event-driven architectures, but you don't have to use reactive programming for just servlets, servlet-based programming, right? So GPU and hardware integration in Java is coming more and more. This is Project Panama, and I would expect an even tighter integration. And what I also observe now, all the next-gen frameworks like Quarkus, Hadidon, Micronaut, they are already there, and they try to avoid reflection. They integrate well with GraalVM, and I think all the new frameworks will behave like that. And the other frameworks will have to catch up. So GraalVM is still strong and great. I would say this is a great framework, and it's very, great framework. This is not a great framework, great runtime, and very interesting one. It's great future. Event-driven architecture, similar to function as a service. What I see here, they are used properly. So back then, in all the workshops, people ask me, what was my opinion about event-driven architectures? And I say, okay, why would you like to know it? Yeah, because I'm just interested, but there are no really use cases. But in one of my projects right now, what we are doing is, there's a huge database, and we get the events, and they are going to be analyzed outside the database. And in such a case, event-driven architectures make absolute sense. Then a little bit about the Jakarta EE and MicroProfile future. Still, I think Jakarta EE and MicroProfile, great future, is good for productivity. So you have the boring operating system already solved, so you can focus on the more interesting stuff. Then ARM is the future. This is just this is my notes. This is not. I will never write ARM is the future, because I get 2 million comments, so I'm completely wrong. But the idea is that the ARM CPU architecture is interesting, with AWS Graviton and stuff like that. Then Visual Studio Code, actually nice IDE. I like it more and more. And at the beginning, I just did it, for small things, but it really catches up and it supports. This is like, the common IDE. And JavaFX, unbeatable. So unbeatable, yeah, this was just enough for me. So what JavaFX is a unique opportunity right now to create a native UI apps with Java and ship them to all the app stores, iOS, Android, and Windows, and easier than Flutter, for instance, right? So this is what is. And I had on the show as well the Johan Voss again on JXFM podcast. So if you like, listen to the episode. So where is it? Where is Johan? Wait a sec. So JXFM, and this is Johan Voss. JavaFX everywhere. So if you would like, this is just episode about exactly that. Okay, so I hope I will manage to write the predictions. So now EJB and CDI beans field we already covered as, and J7 bean discovery mode all versus annotated. I always use all, never annotated. I always switch to all. Why? Because I don't like to write dependent everywhere. And in theory, at the beginning, I always got the comments, yeah, but the performance is not as good with annotated, but I never had any trouble with performance. And what is the name of the champ? RSR. So, I mean, your name is very short, very concise, but you are absolutely right. We already covered the constructor injection and dependency injection multiple times. So we answered all the questions and even all the predictions. And how to secure a REST API without JSON Web Token. So without JSON Web Token, you can use the Jakarta EE Security. So it's available for ages, and you don't have to pass the token. With Jakarta EE Security, you can pass whatever you like. So you could even use query parameters if you like. So Bitmonkey asked me about Heroku and Cloud Foundry. The question is, this is not even a question, it's a statement. Heroku was bought by Salesforce, I think. So the question is, what do you like to know from Heroku and Cloud Foundry? I never did a project with Cloud Foundry, so I have no intelligent opinion on that. For WAR deployment, I'm not sure whether, Heroku, I think supported WAR deployment because I was on the booth one time, and Cloud Foundry, no idea whether they support wars, but something like Elastic Beanstalk from Amazon, they also had support already. But I'm really curious about the Payara guys because it's an interesting company. But you're right, Bitmonkey. So Heroku, Cloud Foundry, if they support war deployment, this is something what I thought about, and I mean, why not, right? Before I spend days designing my virtual private cloud, I just push my war to Cloud Foundry if it works, or Heroku, and I'm done, right? This is the idea. And this is why standards are so important, because if Cloud Foundry and Heroku support MicroProfile, then I create one war I can push everywhere without any runtime inside. Because if I have a fed war with all the runtime inside, I have to perform security scanning again and all the slowness. So it should only contain business logic, how it should be. The infrastructure and business logic should be separated. Now, thank you for watching. See you all, of course, at so what you should do is everyone from you should register to the meetup so that we'll pass 400. So this is our own goal. Meetup AirHacks. So we should, after the show, we have 401 members. And even if you have to rename yourself and register twice. So 401 is the target for the next show. And of course, see you all at AirHacks Live and AirHacks FM. So AirHacks FM, the queue is full, I think, for the next 10 shows, right? So interesting guests, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and see you next time at 85th edition of AirHacks TV. I think, no, March 1st, it will be April something. So thank you and bye.